Hello and welcome to Another Day, Another Evil. I'm your host Georgina.
And I'm Melissa, and this week it's my turn to tell you about a serial killer. Depending on your definition of serial killer, you might not actually classify this person as one, but we are anyways. So this serial killer is also, across all my years of being interested in true crime, the one that I feel the most sympathy for, and whilst I don't condone the murders, I do understand them. And I think that his reputation and treatment is unjust, especially when you consider other criminals who commit serious crimes, are released and go on then to reoffend. So this serial killer has been nicknamed the Hannibal killer. And whilst we don't normally use monikers, I think it's important. And again, we'll discuss this later. But this is the case of Robert Maudsley. Just a note before we start, I personally, when I'm talking about criminals, tend to use their surnames, but today I'll be using Robert's first name. And again, I'll explain my decision later, but I just wanted to be clear up front. Also, this case makes mentions of sexual abuse and cannibalism, so listener discretion, as always, is advised. Robert John Mawdsley was born on the 26th of June 1953 in Speke, Liverpool, the fourth child to his parents Jean and George Mawdsley, who would eventually have a total of 12 children. At around 6 months old, Robert, along with his older siblings, Paul, Gavin and Brenda, were placed in an orphanage. Now, I've read sources that say that the children were removed due to parental neglect, and others which say they were sent there because the parents couldn't cope. By the way, they ended up at the orphanage, Nazareth House in Crosby, which was run by nuns. Robert's brother Paul recalls that they enjoyed living at the orphanage, saying, quote, "It was a brilliant place and we all went to school up the road in Little Crosby. We were happy. We spent 9 years there and were a real family unit. We looked upon the nuns as our parents. Our real parents never came to see us until towards the very end of those 9 years. We didn't know them. I have no memories of them before we were at the orphanage." But after living there for 9 years, their parents took them back. According to Robert's nephew Gavin, this was completely out of the blue and Robert wasn't happy about it. And this is where Robert began to be abused. Paul said, quote, "Bob didn't get abused more than me and Kevin. All three of us got our fair share. Brenda wasn't beaten, but he was the youngest and I think things affected him more. It was just the old fella who hit us, with his fists, belt and sometimes a stick, but our ma instigated half of it. If we went to the shops instead of coming straight home, she would bring it to Dad's attention and he would beat us. I think they were equally to blame. In my eyes, a mother is supposed to protect her children." So the boys' room consisted of a mattress on the floor and they had no blankets. They had to cover themselves with coats. And according to Gavin, the boys were beaten in front of, quote, "the punishment wall," which was in the hallway, and they would be ordered to strip down before they were beaten. Robert, however, believes he was targeted more than his siblings, saying, quote, "All I remember of my childhood is the beatings. Once I was locked in a room for 6 months and my father only opened the door to come in and beat me 4 or 6 times a day. He used to hit me with sticks or rods, and he once bust a .22 air rifle over my back." He also apparently, and though I can't find a direct quote of him saying this, claimed that he was sexually abused by his father, although Gavin recently said that no sexual abuse ever took place. After only a year of living back with his parents, Robert was sent into foster care. And his brother has said that he returned home one day to find the wall covered in blood and Robert gone. So that's the punishment wall, covered in blood, and Robert gone. And he later found out that he was beaten so badly that his arm and leg were broken and he was therefore removed by social services. And I'm not sure why they didn't remove the other children, but they didn't. They just sent Robert. So Robert moved through various foster homes, experiencing more abuse during this time. At aged 16, he fled to London, and as you can imagine, for someone who had experienced such a traumatic childhood, and given the context that I'm telling you his story today, he didn't end up rich and successful, but instead developed a drug addiction and ended up turning to sex work in order to fund this. During this time, he also spent a number of periods in psychiatric hospitals following a number of suicide attempts, and he repeatedly informed doctors that he heard voices in his head instructing him to kill his parents. And whether the voices were real in a psychological sense or just his own thoughts, can you really blame him for wanting them dead?
I was going to say, he probably could hear voices in his head telling him to kill his parents. Like, I think we all, when we've fallen out with somebody, probably have voices in our heads saying awful things, because it is, or for a lot of people who have an internal dialogue, because there are people that don't, do have voices in your heads.
Yeah. So, on the 14th of March 1974, 20-year-old Robert, who was working as a sex worker, was picked up by labourer John Farrell. After sleeping together, John showed Robert his collection of photographs of children that he had sexually abused. And of course, for someone battling with severe trauma and a lot of mental health issues, this triggered something in Robert, and many sources describe it as flicking a switch, which caused him to snap, and he garroted John to death. Not many details have actually been released regarding this murder, but it seems from everything I've read that no one has contested that John actually did possess child abuse images. So it seems that is confirmed he was actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you ask me, it's very similar to like Eileen Warnos.
Yeah, definitely. Which would be an interesting case to cover.
Yeah. She's definitely on our list to do.
Yeah.
I know that much, but
maybe that should be your next one.
Could be, yeah. Because it's a hard one, isn't it, when it's somebody doing, like, in this case, he killed him because he was a bad person.
Yeah.
That will have been, like, putting it simply.
Yeah.
That's what he did.
Yeah.
And it's such a difficult one, isn't it, when you, like, then have to decide whether they're also a bad person.
Yeah.
But in, like, society, obviously, it can't be condoned.
Yeah, definitely.
We can't take the law into our own hands.
No, definitely not. Okay, so this is the story that's been repeated in every source that I found, except for one, where I found an interview from 2025 with Robert's nephew Gavin, who I've already mentioned. And he actually tells this story slightly differently.
Okay.
And I would really recommend this interview. I found it on YouTube by a channel called Behind Bars TV. Of course, I'll link it in our show notes, but I would highly recommend watching this. Anyway, according to Gavin, Robert befriended a group of men and one night was plied with drink and then they gang raped him, which caused him to vow revenge. Whilst he struggled to locate all of them, he knew one of them was at this property, which is where he killed him. And Gavin just refers to him as the guy and uses the term the property, but presumably this is John Farrell and this is the house where he was found dead. And Gavin did confirm that Robert had been shown child abuse images. And he then said that once Robert was unable to locate the other men who had raped him, he called the police. And this kind of brings us back to the story as it's told everywhere else.
Okay, so that snippet that you just said has only been mentioned by Gavin in this one place.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And like I said, there's like no information about this murder, barring the name, the fact that he'd shown Robert sexual abuse images of children, and but which version of events in terms of the lead up, not sure. But Gavin obviously confirms the sexual abuse images, and he confirms that Robert did kill this guy. But how that came to be is
debated.
And whether, because it's such because there's not much reporting on it and the police haven't released any information about this kind of investigation, whether it is the media piecing things together and then it's just got repeated and repeated over the years. Obviously this was a case from, did I say 1974? Yeah, 1974, so it's easy to kind of have two sources which have said one thing. So, but regardless, Robert called the police, and they didn't initially believe him. They just thought he was kind of high or bragging or whatever. But he arranged to meet them, and then he took them back to the body. He was then obviously arrested, but he was deemed unfit to stand trial and was sent to Broadmoor Hospital, which, if you don't know, is a psychiatric mental hospital. Don't know how it was termed back in the 70s, but it's a psychiatric hospital for the treatment of criminals, mostly. It's a secure unit, isn't it? So during Gavin's interview on this YouTube channel, he tells a story which isn't widely reported on from Robert's time in Broadmoor. And according to Gavin, Robert befriended another prisoner, let's call him Luke. And one day Luke is sexually assaulted by another prisoner, who we're going to call Dave. And Robert finds Luke crying in his cell, and Luke tells Robert what's happened. And Robert tells him not to worry about it and to leave it to him. So then Robert finds Dave and attempts to kill him. Dave didn't die, but he was left paralysed. And Gavin says that he doesn't believe that this ever went to court. And this is something that I've not seen in any other source. It is just coming from Gavin's interview. So again, a different version of events to kind of the public version, if you like.
It makes it understandable that it maybe didn't ever go to court.
Yeah.
And I guess,
yeah,
maybe with it being in the location of a secure psychiatric hospital, that they maybe did deal with it in maybe a slightly different way, or whether...
I think that's what Gavin alludes to. He kind of just makes out as if it kind of gets brushed to one side and dealt with internally.
I imagine that lots of things similar to that might happen on a daily thing if it's people who have serious mental illnesses.
Yeah. So after this, we come to Robert's second murder when he was just 24. Again, Gavin's version is ever so slightly different, and again far more vague than the one that's out there in every other sources. Okay. But we'll start with the public story, if you like. So in 1977, Robert and another prisoner named David Cheeseman took a third prisoner, David Francis, who was a suspected paedophile, hostage, and barricaded the three of them inside a cell, where they, as in Robert and Cheeseman, tortured Francis for a period of 10 hours before killing him. And apparently, when the guards were eventually allowed inside, they found Francis dead, with his head, quote, cracked open like a boiled egg, with a spoon sticking out of it and half of his brain missing. And this led to the rumours about Robert eating it. Now, according to Gavin, and again he doesn't use names, like I said, it's a little bit difficult to follow and piece together, but according to Gavin, the day before this happened, there was a siege in the facility where they protested conditions. And during this, one prisoner, who I'm assuming is Francis, sexually assaulted the other, who I'm assuming is Cheeseman, and then this led to the murder.
Okay.
But Gavin did confirm that Francis was tortured by Robert and Cheeseman, but he disputes the brain eating. And this has been disputed elsewhere after the autopsy. But he says that he's seen the autopsy report and it says that the brain was 100% intact.
And again, as we've said previously in other episodes, cannibalism is such a hard one to prove.
Yeah.
Because unless you physically watch them do it,
or kill them and find it in their stomach contents,
it is just one word against another.
Yeah. So if you read about Robert Maudsley in most sources, it'll say that he earned the nickname or the moniker Blue following his first murder, and that's because the colour the victim's face became as he was strangling him.
Yeah.
He then earned the nickname Spoons following the murder of Francis, and this was due to the spoon sticking out of his head. However, Gavin says that this is actually a misunderstanding, and the spoon, which of course was a plastic one that had the head snapped off and fashioned into a shank, was actually the one that was used on the unnamed victim who we named Dave, who Robert paralysed, and he'd stabbed it through his ear.
Right.
So yeah, Gavin says that's kind of where that
the spoon comes in.
The spoon came in, and maybe the media or the public have conflated these two incidents. However, what is interesting, in the loosest sense of the term, is that Robert was determined to be unfit to stand trial after he killed John Farrell, which is the first victim who he garroted because he showed him child abuse sex images, child sexual abuse
which
images.
is where he got the alleged nickname Blue from.
Yeah. Because he was unfit to stand trial, he was sent to Broadmoor. However, this time, after murdering another sex offender, remember Francis is a paedophile, in Broadmoor, they decided that he was fit to be in court, even though he'd never been discharged from Broadmoor. So, he's in a psychiatric unit because he was unfit to stand trial. He's not been discharged. They've not deemed him kind of like the psychiatrists, if you like, haven't said that he's actually okay now. But they decide that he's okay to go to court this time. And he pleads guilty. And then he's sent to Wakefield Prison, which is notoriously dubbed as the Monster Mansion, due to its housing of high-profile dangerous offenders. And of course, many of the prisoners within Wakefield, the high-risk prisoners, are sex offenders. So where better to send somebody who has a known risk of killing sex offenders? And of course, you could speculate that this was done for one purpose, by the authorities to get rid of the sex offenders who will likely go on to be released, but letting it kind of be at the hands of somebody else. But of course, speculation, allegedly.
I'm going to make no comment.
But Robert knew the risks of this, like being sent to this place. He knew that he needed help, and he knew that sex offenders triggered his rage. And he told the authorities not to put him with those types of people. And again, I'm not justifying his murders, I'm not justifying his actions, we can't condone vigilantism. But it is really important context, I think, to his story, especially given that we let a lot of rapists off because they can't control their urges when they see like women in skirts or whatever other crap, like the whole what underwear was she wearing kind of like crap. So
yes, but what were you wearing? How much did you drink?
So it's important to put it into a contextual situation rather than just kind of telling you that he did X, Y, and Z. So the murder at Broadmoor occurred in 1977, and this led to Robert's move to Wakefield Prison. And then on the 28th of July 1978, he killed again, which he told them he would. Told them not to put them with sex offenders. So Robert had planned to kill as many as he could and spent the day of the murders trying to entice people into his cell, mostly unsuccessfully, I might add. However, he did convince cellmate Darwood who was in there for murdering his wife, to enter his cell, where he killed him by strangling him with a garrote and then stabbing him with a shank. And he then hid Darwood's body under his bed and tried to lure more people in. And when that was unsuccessful, he left his own cell and entered the cell of William Roberts, who was a convicted paedophile. And Roberts was sleeping when Robert entered and stabbed him to death. Robert then walked up to the guard's post, handed over his shank and told them that they would be, quote, too short on the next roll call. And Robert pled guilty to these murders, telling the court, quote, when I kill, I think I have my parents in mind. If I had killed my parents in 1970, none of these people need have died. If I had killed them, then I would be walking around as a free man without a care in the world. And Robert was then handed a whole life tariff, which of course is life without parole. Here in England and Wales, it's only handed to a selected few who have committed the most horrific of crimes. I think it's much more common in the US. So here in England and Wales, as of March 2026, when the latest figures were released, there are currently over 87,000 prisoners in the system. Over 7,500 are serving life sentences, but of those 7,500, only 75 are actually on a whole life order. So you can see that it's such a small proportion of the actual.
That's only 1% of those serving life sentences.
Yeah.
I can't do the quick maths on the
Yeah.
of all prisoners.
Yeah, no. And on a side note, if you're interested, the government releases the quarterly statistics on the prison population, and this details age, sex, nationality, sentence types, etc. Anyway, that's Robert. So following his guilty plea and whole life order, the prison service decided to take him seriously when he told them not to house him with the sex offenders.
Which can I add, like, that's a normal thing to do within prisons nowadays. You have separate wings.
Yeah. Because
this happens.
Yeah, because even amongst criminals,
there is a hierarchy
of
who is worse than the others.
Yeah, and sex offenders are, especially paedophiles, are definitely the lowest of the low.
Yeah.
So this is of course what Robert Maudsley is most known for, and it's where his nickname Hannibal came from, and this is his solitary confinement within the glass cage in the basement of Wakefield Prison. And the imagery is of course similar to the infamous character of Hannibal Lecter from The Silence of the Lambs. The glass cell wasn't actually built until 1983, so Robert was segregated into another unit whilst this cell was constructed. And this is actually where the majority of reports focus their attention, particularly around the length of time that Robert has spent in solitary confinement, and he is the longest of any serving prisoner. I don't know if that's worldwide or if it's just here, but he's definitely the longest serving prisoner. I think it's worldwide. The person has spent the most time in solitary confinement. And there have also been a lot of discussions regarding his treatment throughout the years. So, during all this time, Gavin confirmed that Robert had been moved around various different prisons, but he did remain in solitary confinement through all of them. During his stay at Parkhurst Prison, and this is relatively well documented, and another major aspect which factors into people's support of Robert, he met a psychiatrist, Dr. Bob Johnson. This wasn't part of any treatment plan for Robert, but Dr. Johnson saw him one day and then decided that he wanted to speak to him and try and help him. So it was approved by the authorities, and the pair built up a relationship, and Dr. Johnson felt that Robert was actually making progress. However, after 3 years, Robert was returned to Wakefield Prison, and Dr. Johnson was just not allowed to see him again. They kind of pulled the plug and no real reason was given. Dr. Johnson sent a number of letters to Robert which went unanswered until one day he received a reply saying, quote, "All alone now." And from the family's perspective, it feels like Robert was making progress and the authorities didn't actually want him to. That's kind of the perspective that they've got.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said about solitary confinement and the amount of studies that have actually gone into how detrimental it is for humans to be in solitary confinement and how much it regresses you.
Yeah. I don't know if I mentioned this later, but Gavin said during his interview that I watched that actually, from a mental health side, obviously it has deteriorated Robert Maudsley, but in terms of his social skills and stuff, he's actually doing really well with that, and he's kind of taken the view that he needs to, because he can't let them kind of ruin that little bit of him.
Yeah.
So Robert's time in prison outside of the murders has made headlines over the years. After 20 years inside, so in the year 2000, Robert wrote a letter begging either for his conditions to be improved by being given access to classical music, television, pictures, toiletries and a budgie to have as a pet and a companion. Or he wanted to be given a cyanide capsule and allowed to die. And the authorities refused to both, not just the cyanide, which obviously not okay.
Yeah. not in our
system, yeah.
System, yeah.
So Robert wrote, quote, "What purpose is served by keeping me locked up 23 hours a day? Why even bother to feed me and to give me 1 hour's exercise a day? Who actually am I a risk to? As a consequence of my current treatment and confinement, I feel that all I have to look forward to is indeed psychological breakdown, mental illness, and probable suicide. The prison authorities see me as a problem, and their solution has been to put me into solitary confinement and throw away the key, to bury me alive in a concrete coffin. It does not matter to them whether I am mad or bad. They do not know the answer, and they do not care, just so long as I am kept out of sight and out of mind. I am left to stagnate, vegetate, and to regress. Left to confront my solitary head-on with people who have eyes but don't see, and who have ears but don't hear, who have mouths but don't speak. My life in solitary is one long period of unbroken depression." However, after a few decades inside, he found that the conditions did improve, and he was given access to books, music, television, a PlayStation, and the guards began to respect him and they'd often play chess with him. His two older brothers and Gavin regularly visit him. Many have actually described Robert as being highly intelligent, and a former police detective, John Harrison, who has interviewed Robert during the time that he was incarcerated, described him as being, quote, "a really intelligent, clever guy who made you smile." He says that Robert was unlike other serial killers that he's spoken to, who are narcissistic and only want to talk of themselves, and that John didn't actually get that impression from Robert. And he further stated how he could empathise with Robert and understand what he did. Quote, "He doesn't want to get out of prison. He's been in there too long. His issues are more about getting equal treatment with other prisoners, getting some fresh air. He killed 2 paedophiles, but I feel real empathy for him. There are people worse than him in the prison system who get away with a lot more. I came out and wrote to the Home Secretary. I wrote to the Queen, everybody, and I didn't get a single reply." So, following Ian Brady's death in 2017, Robert then became the longest serving prisoner in Britain. In 2025, it was reported that Robert was on hunger strike after his luxury items, the TV, PlayStation, books, etc., had been confiscated. And his brother Paul said, quote, He's back to how he was 10 years ago when he didn't have anything to stimulate him and he would just sit there and vegetate and was in danger of going mad. He loves playing war games and chess on his PlayStation, and he's always watching old films on TV and reading factual books. They're so important to him. It's not fair to take them away without good reason. We can't get through to anyone to find out what's going on, and we are very concerned. And then later that year it was confirmed that Robert had been moved to Whitehall Prison.
And sorry, this was in 2025, so last year.
Last year, yeah.
As of recording.
Yeah. So that kind of wraps up the story of Robert Maudsley. There are other things out there, particularly around his relationship, and when I say relationship, not a sexual relationship,
Okay.
just general relationship, with the notorious Charles Bronson, but it doesn't actually add anything further to our story, so I've decided not to include it. I also couldn't find any information regarding his victims, which is perhaps not surprising given their own criminal acts. And I said at the top of the show that I chose to refer to Robert by his first name, not his surname, like I would normally do with a perpetrator. And I've chosen to do this because I personally believe that he's been dehumanised enough throughout his treatment and incarceration. So, lots to discuss. What are your thoughts, Gina?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said about our criminal justice system in England and Wales. We talked about this in a recent episode and the need to reform our criminal justice system. I really don't know what episode it was.
We've talked about it in quite a few, I think.
We have, yeah. I was thinking that we specifically kind of talked about the need of reforming it.
Yeah.
And I think I have a lot to say about being allowed the TVs, PlayStations and everything like that in prison, and I don't agree with it. Books, yeah. Games such as like Scrabble or chess or physical games, I agree with fine. Books, agree with fine. Education, I'm a big support for, because I believe that prison should reform people.
Yeah.
I don't agree that our prison system reforms people.
No. Definitely not. I think if we looked at the statistics of people who are back at, in there as reoffenders, it would be a high proportion.
Yeah. So but my thing is, it's not he shouldn't be allowed luxury items such as TVs, PlayStation, books. It's that everybody shouldn't be allowed. I don't see the need for them to have a TV.
No.
Especially in prisons that are in high risk long term prisons where they are not getting out. I don't see the need for them to have a TV, a PlayStation, books, stuff like that. I can understand an argument in prisons where they are going to get out or will be released. Short-term prisons, and they are going to be released because that is our society. So I can understand why in prisons like that there potentially is a TV and stuff. But yeah, so I think my argument there comes from a standpoint of prison in general.
Yeah.
I think personally he is not justified in his murders. Like we say, we shouldn't be allowed to take the law into our own hands, and I agree with that. However, I can see why people do take the law into their own hands, and I can sympathise with that because there are people that I would quite like to murder too because of what they've done. and potentially got away with.
Yeah.
Which is what he's done.
Yeah. I think from my perspective with that, don't condone vigilantism. My issue with kind of the Robert Maudsley case, if you like, is he obviously hasn't been given the help.
No.
Like, you can't...
He's asked for it.
Yeah. You cannot send people to Broadmoor and then, when something happens there, decide that they are actually okay and then put them in prison for it to happen again.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I don't understand why he wasn't given more help in Broadmoor.
Yeah.
Especially considering when he spoke to the psychiatrist in the 90s, and he felt that there was making progress, etc., etc. And I think there's a lot lacking there. He's not been given any help and support. To go from being in Broadmoor where you're not okay to obviously still not being okay, but then deciding that you can go into prison.
Yeah.
Not lots of problems there.
Yeah.
And I think I have a whole issue with the whole life order. I think when you compare it to some of the other people on whole life orders who have actually committed fucking disgusting and repeated, and I think this comes down to your interpretation of a serial killer, because I think the technical, like really technical definition is kind of having the same MO, the kind of the lapse in between the kills, the getting enjoyment from it.
Yeah.
This doesn't apply to Robert Maudsley. And yeah, to decide that he is equal to somebody else who's on a whole life order just seems like a big mismatch to me, and it does feel, like I said, he's the only person that I ever think I actually have a lot of sympathy for, because obviously a lot of serial killers or one-time offenders, lots of serious offenders do have issues in their background, and I'm not saying that that's the reason why I empathise with Robert Maudsley. My thing is actually his treatment in prison after that.
I don't understand why he's in solitary confinement. Baffles me.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I don't know what the prison system was like in the 90s or when he started. Like,
it was in the early 70s and 80s when he first went out.
Yeah, so I don't know what the prison system was like then. But I know for a fact now that you have different wings for different categories of people. So you have specific wings for high risk prisoners that are like you paedophile, those type of
who are in danger from
who are in danger. Yeah, so why he's still in solitary confinement is beyond me, because he's saying don't put me with people who are paedophiles or who have sexually assaulted people, because I find that a big trigger.
If you'd have put him on a wing with fucking people who've committed tax fraud, like
what's he got? Like that's not a trigger for him. He's identified what his trigger is. He said don't put me with them. I don't understand why he's in solitary confinement. I can't get my brain around that.
No,
especially now, because in 2025 he was still in solitary confinement and then has had things confiscated from him. Why he had it confiscated when you get an hour a day out of it, I mean, I'm sure that they'll have their own reasons, and we don't know what that is, so I can't go on to discuss that, but I don't get why he's in solitary confinement.
No. And
now,
I think there's a lot of non-logic to this case, especially when you put it in the context of all the other criminals and a lot of the serious offenders who commit an offence, get life but are released in 20 years, go out, reoffend. Like, I don't understand the logic to first thing, not giving him the psychiatric help that he obviously needed.
Yeah.
He wasn't fixed in Broadmoor.
Yeah.
He obviously still had a lot of psychological issues.
Yeah, because he was committing those crimes in Broadmoor. Against
the type of... He didn't kill a nurse.
No.
He killed a paedophile.
Yeah. He still had the same MO.
Yeah, it was still the same type of people who he struggles with. Yeah. So, yeah, that logic is just seriously flawed. And yeah, I think for me, this is why I have used, like I said, I have used his first name because I think he's been dehumanised enough. The fact that he's known as like the worst person, he's like Hannibal the cannibal. He didn't eat anybody. He used Hannibal because of the spoon, which was not true.
Yeah.
And
allegedly.
The spoon, he did actually stab the spoon into it's because the spoon was sticking out of his head. Yeah.
I mean, allegedly he's not eaten anybody.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's no evidence that he has, and it doesn't seem like he would. That doesn't seem to be his thing. He's not done anything I mean, they tortured the guy in Broadmoor, but that was 2 people.
Yeah.
That was 2 of them. So...
Do we know what happened to David Cheeseman?
I didn't look.
I didn't look. I wonder what he got with that.
Yeah, I should have looked.
Obviously, it might not even be out there, because obviously Robert Maudsley is such like a big name. Everybody, most people will know who he is, or will have heard of him in some way in the true crime sphere.
Yeah, and you kind of think he's up there, I think, in terms of notoriety with like the serious offenders, and he's not the same.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I've chosen to use his first name, because like I said, he has been dehumanised enough to have killed these people in a kind of vigilante sense, and not have the kind of sadistic nature that the other people who he's equated to do, and to have just not given him the help that he needs.
And he's killed more people inside.
Yeah, he killed 1 person.
He killed 1 person, and then he's killed or seriously injured and killed, what, like 5?
Yeah, if you
include
for
the one where we were unsure on names.
Yeah, so it's 4 inside, and 1 outside, so 5 total. But to me, I'm not saying he should have ever been released.
No, but he should have got.
He should have had the help.
He should have potentially been released, because who knows what that would have then led to.
There's so many people who we just let out for good behaviour in the prison, which is fake as anything, and then you go out and reoffend, and I'm like, I don't understand how you can use this logic for this prisoner who does you can tell he obviously needs psychiatric help.
Yeah.
Broadmoor was maybe not the right place for him, but he needed help somewhere.
Yeah.
There are other secure psychiatric institutes that he could have been
why
put
he then
in.
didn't get moved from Broadmoor.
Yeah. Because Broadmoor would have been filled with a lot of sex offenders, given the kind of psychiatric treatments that
it was known back then.
The logic seems very, very flawed to me, so it's definitely one of the reasons why I look past the vigilantism, and I'm like, there's so many more issues that you'd need to address first. And no, like I said, not saying he should have been released if he was a risk to the public, but how do you know he's a risk to the public if you don't actually try and help him? When we let other people out who've done way worse things. So
I agree. It's such a hard one to comment on, because like you say, like, it's so politically driven that, yeah, like you say, you're not saying that he should have ever been released, but there are other things that should have happened which didn't happen.
Yeah.
Which could have then stopped the rest of it happening. Like, he could have then just killed one person in Broadmoor and then been moved somewhere else, because that tends to be in prison what you do. If there's a serious incident, they get moved.
Yeah.
They get taken out of that situation, which, if you think about, like, kids,
basic, like, just remove somebody from a situation,
remove you from the situation, and that can completely change the whole harmony of everything. So if he'd have been removed and put somewhere else for psychiatric help, which he obviously needed, because he had significant trauma from his childhood, then I'm not saying that he wouldn't have gone on to carry on doing all of this and carry on with vigilantism, like he might have done, and it might have been one of those things where he couldn't have got the help that he needed.
Yeah. But we
don't know, because it didn't happen.
No. And when unless you treat everybody in the same way as this, like, we do release people and they've not been rehabilitated and they go on to recommit, and fine, yes, absolutely, then lock them up for life. And I'm not saying release somebody and then let them have the chance to kill somebody else, but you can't do it for one and not the other. Like, you can't do it for every other prisoner in the system except this one person who... He killed one person before I went in.
Yeah.
Was deemed unfit to stand trial. He didn't even go to trial and the judge make a call.
Yeah.
He didn't even go through, like, the psychiatric stuff at trial.
Yeah.
Like, he just was deemed unfit to stand trial and they put him in Broadmoor.
Yeah.
And then he didn't get the help, but then they decided to just send him into normal prison.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There are big issues.
Yeah. There are massive issues with this case, and this is... One of the things that I wanted to kind of highlight from doing this case, there are limited reports on everything. Like, the reporting that you see is all the, like, headlines about him being locked up in solitary for however many years, and about his, like, the gory torture details that him and Cheeseman did against David Francis. Not okay, obviously not okay, but there are other massive factors that are ignored everywhere.
Yeah.
So
needs
the public
to be talked about.
Yes, the public perception is very skewed.
Yeah.
If you see the only picture of him available is one that was taken back in the 70s or 80s, and they did a documentary, and it's just like a still of him, and that, if you like, that's it. Yeah. No up-to-date images of him. It's just, there's a lot of issues with his treatment in prison that aren't discussed, and that need discussing in the context of the rest of the prison system.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
No, I could rant about it for ages, and I think that I'd just end up on a loop.
Yeah, me too. It's a very frustrating case.
Yeah.
When you look at the reality of his treatment, and like I said, not condoning his actions, not saying that he should have ever been released if he wasn't fit to be, but the disjointed logic of how he's been treated is not okay.
No.
Okay, so thank you for listening to the case of Robert Maudsley. Tune in next week.
Stay safe.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Make sure you like, follow, and leave us a review if you enjoyed it.
All episodes are written and presented by Melissa and Georgina Scara.
Editing is by Vicky Hunter.
All of our sources can be found in our show notes or on our website.
Take care.
Stay safe.